Okay. So now I'm going to introduce you to Sebastián Di Martino and Sofía Heinonen. They both work for the same organization, which is Rewilding Argentina. So they represent the same team. The idea why I invited them is because Sofía is the CEO of Rewilding Argentina, and she saw kind of the beginning of the whole process that you're going to see. And Sebastián is now the coordinator for Rewilding. So he came later, and he's now the one in charge, and I think it was good to get both perspectives. I was honored enough to be the coordinator for Rewilding for 10 years, and then Sofía and I, it's difficult to look for a replacement, so it took us a while to identify and empower Sebastián, and what he's doing now is just bringing the whole Rewilding team to a much higher scale. So I think this is the largest experience of translocations in Latin America, so we wanted to look for an example in Latin America by far. And I think it's an excellent opportunity of how a team that is extremely competitive right now at a global scale that didn't exist 15 years ago. And how a country that didn't have an experience in translocation really gained so much experience and position itself in the front line of translocations in such a short time. So it's kind of the message is that you can learn very fast, and some people have said that. I mean, we are standing on the shoulders of giants. So if you learn from the people who already know, instead of reinventing the wheel, you can grow very, very fast and become very good. And I mean, position yourself from the place of amateur and not knowing anything to becoming the biggest expert in some species as practitioners. So here are Sebastián and Sofía. Welcome.
Rewilding means actively working to help locally extinct animals return to the places that they inhabited, reestablishing relations and interactions that keep ecosystems healthy. To this end, we employ two strategies: rehabilitating animals that have been injured or living in captivity and translating them to a secure area so that after intensive work, they can return to life in the wild. We also translocate healthy animals from national parks and other protected areas to areas under restoration to help create healthy new populations. This intensive work takes place with a collaboration of governments and other institutions, together with biologists, veterinarians, park rangers, technicians, and local residents. With the national government, the province of Corrientes, and the National Parks Administration, after years of intensive work, we have been able to reintroduce iconic species of Iberá, like the giant anteater, the pampas deer, the collared peccary, and the red and green macaw. And now, we're undertaking our greatest challenge, reintroducing top predators such as the giant otter and the jaguar. Rewilding is part of a larger vision. Rewilding means protecting and restoring natural environments with all their species and natural processes to help sustain a healthy local economy through nature-based tourism. Wildlife recovers its vitality and becomes integral to the identity of local communities who show pride in their surroundings by staying and working toward a new model of development that respects and prioritizes beautiful, healthy, and vibrant environment.
El impacto acá es la salud del ecosistema, el bienestar de las comunidades, la cantidad de jóvenes que quieren quedarse y elegir apostar por ese lugar que se llama su casa.
We have started to apply all that we have learned in Iberá to other regions of Argentina, the Gran Chaco, Patagonia, and the Argentine Sea. We hope that more countries of Latin America and the world will feel inspired to work together to stop the extinction crisis. Let's all take this journey together to return to nature.
Well, as Ignacio says, we are a team with Sebastián. We always say that we share hand to hand so we can fight and change the world outside and inside the parks. We have to look to nature, but as well to the local economy to stop threats. So we always work with two heads and always cares for the backs of the other one. It's a special way of working. We learned it from Doug and Chris. They were working together as a pair. We are not a pair with Sebastián, but almost. So I wanted to thank you all because what we do is because you did it before. We learned from India, we learned from Spain, we learned from North America, we learned from Africa. So all our experience is because you did it before, and we were willing to do it as good as you did it, but faster.
We say that we have the last speech. We hear to everything that you say that is always inspiring, and always it makes us keep learning. But also we started later. So we went a lot to Africa or here Europe or North America to get inspired, and then start working in Latin America.
Our story begins, we were both young and long ago, and we were biologists in the field, and philanthropy, Doug Tompkins came to Argentina with a vision that was inspired on the reintroduction of the wolf in Yellowstone, and he was really willing to find an opportunity. And when they get there in Iberá with this huge open landscape but completely empty, he decided that was the best place to prove that he can bring back the top predator. So that, I think, is one of the visions that came from North America. Then, when he chose me, after a lot of time looking for someone that was willing to get into action, came Ignacio, knocked the door there in Iberá, and he says, I'm coming from Spain, I have read about you, and I think I'm the best person to do it. So here I am, hire me, and this will be done. So that's why Ignacio was there, and with Ignacio and all what he has learned from Spain, and he was, at that time, he wrote a book, so he was coming with a manual already, how you can save species, and with his maestro, as a maestro, we started looking for a team that can take this challenge. The challenge was the top predator, the jaguar, but we knew that there were a lot of species missing, so we have to see how we could do it. And after some years, we went to Africa, to India, because he encouraged us to learn, and we learned together. And basically, that's why we have you all of you as a maestro, and we are here, the last one, we are the youngest. But after 10 years, I have to say, both of them, Doug and Ignacio, left us at the same time. And we as Argentines, at that time, we have a strong commitment to bringing back all the species that were left. We already have a strong commitment to creating parks, because both of us work in the government before working for Doug. And we were already trying to save species, but with another strategy. It was creating parks. South America, I think, is known as a continent that doesn't need a lot of management. It seems to be a complete ecosystem as a whole. So people there, they always tell us, you must do more protected areas. But it was Doug that was already coming from United States, that already know that the wolf was missing and they need to bring it back. That was
the one who pushed us to see that we have already a crisis of extinction in South America and change our whole vision. As I said, both left, and we as a team, as an Argentine team, have to decide what we will go for. And we decided to continue working, but at a bigger scale in Argentina. Argentina is a country that have a lot of ecosystems. It's very, very large. We have the sea, we have the forest, the cloudy forest, the Atlantic forest, the dry areas. So we decided to make this model, try to apply it to other kinds of ecoregions, so we can start to try that South America, although we know there are examples in other countries like Brazil, Ecuador, Peru, get quicker into this restoration decade. And well, here we are after 5 years, 6 years now that they left. We are very proud that we can have an Argentine team that is trying to make their best in Argentina.
Yeah. So to summarize, as Sofía said, the vision was brought with no doubt from the United States by Doug. As Sofía said, we were willing to do that, but we needed the visionary, so he came with all these ideas that sometimes locals don't have, of creating big national parks or of bringing back the top predators. Then Ignacio started to design all the planning of reintroducing these species, at least the first one that we started to work. And then we learned a lot, especially from Africa. We were visiting all the maestros from Africa that were here, also Jala from India. And that's how we came to what is our mission. Our new mission in 2015, like Sofía said, Doug died, Ignacio left, so we started a process of independence, and we needed to start thinking who we were and what we are going to do. So we decided that our mission was going to be to reverse the wildlife extinction crisis. How we tell the tale is similar to what others maestros said. In Argentina and in South America, we suffer a big defaunation process. The first one really was 30,000 years ago when modern humans came to Latin America. In South America, we lost 70% of the mammals that were more than 10 kilos in weight in 13,000 years ago. And then 500 years ago, the white people came and we suffered another defaunation process. And that was particularly big in Argentina. So all the wildlife that remained, that first extinction 13,000 years ago, started to disappear. We kept the ecosystems, but the ecosystems started to be empty, degraded. And Argentina, for sure, was the South American country, together with Uruguay, that suffered most this process. So one thing that is very important is that this process of defaunation happened about 200 years ago, 300 years ago, and our first national park were created 100 years ago. So even the places that we consider most pristine in Argentina, the national parks, they are already degraded. And that implies a big change in how we perceive conservation of nature. Because for the national and provincial governments in Argentina, it's like there's not a need to rewild. Because we think that most of our ecosystems, including national parks, are pristine, and that is something that is wrong. So how we achieve that very briefly, and then we start talking about the species.
Perhaps, Sebas,
yes.
we need to tell that in Argentina, the private property and ranching is sacred. It's all the country is actually 90% private, and cows and basically cows and cattle, they are the most important thing. So it's a very conservative society, and we were willing to bring back a top predator, and we were willing to buy land to give it to the state. So that was kind of the important thing to know when we are speaking about Argentina.
Yeah, exactly. More than 90% of the land in Argentina is in private hands, and national parks, they only occupy less than 2% of our country. So public lands are not really there. It's an economy dominated by cattle, by farming. So to create big national parks, to reverse the wildlife extinction crisis, and to bring back top predator was challenging. So the best way, or how we learn to do this, is our vision, is like our model, is how we work in the territory, that is basically to develop local restorative economies that coexist with complete and fully functional ecosystems. So basically, for us, here, this is Iberá, the place where we started everything. This is how you see Iberá these days, but 20 or 15 years ago, the jaguar was not there, the colored peccary was not there, the red and green macaw, the bare-faced curassow, the giant anteaters, the pampas deer. So Iberá was like a paradise, but empty. So now it's looking like a complete ecosystem. For us, a complete ecosystem is the one that harbors all the species that inhabited it until historical times, until 500 years ago. A functional ecosystem is one in which the species are not only present, but in numbers big enough to fulfill the ecological roles. And one thing that we do, since it's almost impossible to work with all the species, we focus on what Deli explained are keystone species, usually big predators, big herbivores, big fruit eaters. Those are the ones that we want to have in these parks that we are creating. Sometimes they recover by themselves, sometimes you have to bring them back. These keystone species, well, we will not go deep into this, but they fulfill these ecological roles through interactions in the trophic web. This could be direct interactions like predation or competition, or indirect interactions that affect other species and even vegetation. And this is how we do it. Very briefly, we buy land to create parks. We buy land and we donate that land to the national government to create big national parks, sometimes provincial parks. Argentina is a federal state. It's kind of difficult to create national parks because the province owns the natural resources, so the province don't like the nation to be in their territories administering the natural resources. So you have to convince the province that it's a good idea to have a national park. And since the beginning, well, you cannot read there, but two main things that we do in those parks is we open them to the public. Even when we get the land and then we donate it to the National Park Service, the land is open to the public. It has public access, and we invest a lot in public use infrastructure to facilitate those visits. So the locals can go there as visitors, but mostly as entrepreneurs to develop tourism activities. And in those parks that are like our ranches, we produce wildlife. We say that instead of having cattle, instead of having crops, we produce jaguars, we produce giant otters, pumas. That is our production. And in that way, we generate complete and fully functional ecosystems, but also spectacles of abundant and observable wildlife that are also very important in these models. And the one that harvests this production is local people. That's how we get into the economic model, that in the regenerative economy. So it's not us, it's local people that become entrepreneurs. We help them, we train them, we organize them at the beginning, because these are not tourist destinations, but we convert these places that no one knows in very well-known tourism destinations. So local people start to offer services as guides, as cookers, as making handicrafts, providing houses for the tourists. And that way, with these activities that are based on this abundant and observable wildlife that are inside the park, is how we get social support and then political support to create the parks and then bring back the species, including top predators. It's very important that these activities have a high degree of experience, because that's when you have the locals in the model. If they don't have experience, like you go, for example, in Argentina, most of the nature tourism, they go to see beautiful landscapes. It's just staying in a place and looking the Iguazu Falls or the glaciers. It has nothing of experience. So the locals, they don't have an active to be involved in those activities. But when you have these activities with a lot of experience, then the locals become very important for tracking the wildlife. Also, you go in small groups instead in big groups, like tourism based on landscapes, and it's not a massive experience. And then something that we learned is that when the locals start to develop this economy, we change the economy of the region, they start to recover their culture, their identity, the pride for the territory. So it's not only economic, but also has to be with the well-being of a community. And we call this model, in English, economy of nature. In Spanish, we can use producción de naturaleza or nature production. So it's something that was very useful for us, because this is conservation, but politicians, ranchers, businessmen, even local people, they don't feel comfortable talking about conservation, but they like to talk a lot about economy of nature or producción de naturaleza. That is almost the same. So this is the model that we develop in Iberá, and we are trying to apply to the other territories in order to create big parks and reintroduce top predators.
What we learned also, that when you start buying land and you became a big landowner and you are taking cows away, as I said, two sacred things in Argentina, you become they become like very aware of this, and they start thinking that we are like strange people, that we are going to change the whole traditions, and so we have a lot of opposition. I think all these kind of projects that means a great change of the land use have at the very beginning a lot of opposition. So that's why you have to be very careful with the messages. You have to really explain and be near the mayors and try to have a big team, as I said, looking from the outside of the park, outside the ecosystems, and try to work with the locals. This is a photograph of Pellegrini. Was our first town, and that the one who's taking the hands up is the mayor. The mayors are very important in this model. We have always worked with bottom up. You need to have the support and the partnership of local government to get the national government to then protect the land and want to change and bring back the top predators of the jaguar. In this case, we go through all this model until the government of Corrientes, the province, is the one who have the decision making to change things and approve translocations and rewilding. They already put the face of the jaguar in their map. This is kind of the production of the province, where they are very proud, and this is what gives jobs and money to the people. They already incorporate the jaguar as one of the main resources and entrance of the province. Yeah. So getting there is really what we always try to do, to be part of the economy vision of the province, so we can then be sure that they will not get extinct again, because they are seen as a value.
Yeah. Politicians, ranchers, they don't like that the land in a territory change from production to conservation. But if it changes from one type of production to another, that is the production of nature or the economy of nature, they are kind of fine with that. So, and this map shows the different types of production in the Corrientes province made by the government, and the economy of nature has the icon of a jaguar. So that's when the government starts sharing the vision, and everything becomes much easier. So this way, yeah, this is a video that shows the achievements in the first 25 years or the last 25 years in different regions of Argentina. This video shows the 4 places we are working with this full model. These are Iberá, where we learned everything. Actually, after 25 years of work, we just published this book that we will be sharing tomorrow that is all about how we work to achieve this. And the video shows not only the rewilding stories, but also the park creation and the local economies, because we think that it's impossible to bring back top predators without doing all this, to develop all these models.
It changed the context of the region. We have to change completely the story and the values so we can bring nature back and to be sure that they will not get extinct again, no?
Well, one thing I think it's important to stress is, I don't know any other organization that is working in translocations or rewilding that has taken the time to publish a book about their experience, and their, all this logic, this framework of connecting it with policies, with local development, and the different challenges that we've been talking these days. It is only in Spanish right now, but they are translated to English. So, this huge effort of an organization of saying, okay, we're going to stop, and we're going to write what we learned, which are the challenges. The things we've been talking these days, and we're going to put it in a book, I think is absolutely remarkable. So anybody who can look at it tomorrow, or, yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Well, and these are the stories of the different species that we are working with. Maybe we will not get into too much technical details, but at least tell you some of the results we achieve and the main characteristics of each process. So this is the first species that we started to work with. All these are long process. All the other maestros talk about how you have to be involved for long term. You consider that the first ranch that was bought in Iberá was in 1998. Then in 2006, we started planning the coming back of the species. And in 2007, we released the first giant anteater into nature, a species that went extinct in the entire Corrientes province. And of course, the vision or the idea of DAG was bringing back the top predator, but that could not be achieved without working at the beginning with other species. Not mostly because there was a need of prey, because the Iberá was full of capybaras, marsh deers, caimans, but because we as a team, we had to be recognized as a team that can deal with this kind of projects. And this was like a kind of relaxed or easy, between brackets, species. We chose it because it was not particularly endangered. We also chose it because it was a strange animal that creates empathy with people. Also because there were not strong groups working with the species. Sometimes the groups that are working with the species, you can call them experts or owners of the species. They can be of a lot of help, but also they can be a real problem. So that's one of the reasons why we started to work with the anteaters. And also because we found that there was a lot of orphans whose mothers were killed in different provinces of Argentina. The orphans were rescued. Actually, we rescued the orphans. If not, they died. So it was a kind of easy way to get animals because you were not taking animals from the wild. These were animals that were going to die anyway.
And although it seems a long strategy to get a new population to go through these kind of animals, for us was the time that we need to get the politicians and the citizens to know about us and to be supportive. So although it was a challenge going through this long way to get there, we tried to get an opportunity of these, so we should make stories of each of the animals. You need a lot of support, and in Argentina, 92% of the people live in cities, so they like animals, they don't have problems, and telling all these stories. We know that reintroductions is a lot about stories, so we became experts in stories. We make a lot of stories about these orphans.
Yeah, also because when we start working in a territory and we start to buy land, that's the first thing that we do to have a place where we can do these reintroductions. As we said, that's the first opposition usually, and it's more. It has to be with the ranchers mostly, that they don't like that we buy properties and take out cattle. And well, other persons in society related to the ranchers, and the politicians are the ones that react when the ranchers complain. So the first issue is a political problem. But then when we started with the species, the ones in Argentina, we didn't have a culture of active management. So we had this idea, we still have it, that the last thing that you have to do for conservation is moving an animal. Moving is mostly related with illegal trade of animals. So moving animals is banned in Argentina. So we always have to work through exceptions. And the ones that react, as Yala said, are the conservation movements or biologists. So as the ranchers, for buying land, the conservation NGOs and some researchers are the ones that usually react negatively toward these activities, and the ones that react now are not the politicians but the bureaucrats that are also another ones that can stop a project. So it's very important to work in these two groups. And most of all, we work with the politicians because they have a strong power in making decisions.
And they are sensitive to the public support. So we work a lot in media and communication to have the politicians support us to bring all these kind of species.
Yeah, we have for sure a scientific direction in Rewilding Argentina, and it's very important for planning the projects, most of all for monitoring the success of the projects, but also to deal with these researchers and biologists, both in universities, some of them, some others in the government. But for sure, as Sofía said, communication it has a much more impact because between these two groups, society and politicians, for sure, they have more power to decide about the permits. So with the giant anteater, things really went well. Now there are many populations in Iberá. In some of them, we don't reintroduce animals anymore. We don't release animals anymore. They are growing by themselves. In some others, because we are working in 5 different places of Iberá. Iberá is a very big park of 750,000 hectares. So we are working in different places. In 2 of them, we don't release animals anymore. In 2 of them, maybe we will stop releasing animals this year, and in the other, we will keep going because we started much later. But for sure, it's a story of success, the one of the conservation of the reintroduction of giant anteaters. And then when we had like good results with the giant anteaters, we started with another species, that is the pampas deer, that not globally, but in Argentina is endangered, it's an endangered species. And one thing is that here we had the possibility of translocating wild animals from one place to another. We didn't have to work with orphans or animals that came from captivity. So we asked for the permits to the provincial government and the national government, but the national government didn't.
This was a national monument. So as a jaguar, the nation have to prove it also. But as in Argentina, the provinces have the jurisdiction. When the national government say no, we went to the province and say, Corrientes, you have sovereignty. If you want to do it, you can just approve it. And they did it, although the nation say no. So we have to, nobody, the ranchers didn't at that moment, we don't have the support of the ranchers, so we have to buy a piece of land to get the animals to translocate it. So it's like very, very, a lot of challenges in that way. But, and we did it, it was a success. But when we afterwards started with the jaguar, this kind of decision make all the rest more difficult because the nation didn't like what we did and went to the province. No? So that kind of decisions at the end, they are going to also impact over the whole story. No?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, these animals, we moved them from inside the province. That's why the nation didn't have jurisdiction. And one other thing that happened with this species, that in the 70s there was a translocation experience that went really wrong, and that is something that also happens a lot in Argentina, I imagine in other places. When you have a bad experience, then it's very difficult to do another one. Actually, the authorities, they banned the movements of pampas deer in the 70s, the national government. That's why they didn't want to give us a permit. And also, as Sofía said, it's a natural monument that usually when a species is endangered, when you protect it as a natural monument, it's something sacred. You cannot touch. So sometimes it's worse to have the species as national monuments for conservation purpose. But, well, the process also went well. The deers, we translocated them mostly in helicopters. They go in business inside, not hanging from the helicopters like in Africa. And so far, the population is around 200 animals. We translocate around 30 in total, 30-something. It's not really big, but it's the biggest population protected in a protected area in Argentina. All the other ones are in private properties. So after that, we started with the collared peccary, also in Iberá, a species that we thought it was going to be really easy, but even the province of Corrientes didn't want to give us the permits because in Corrientes there are feral pigs and there are a lot of problems with sheep ranchers and with rice farmers. So this species looks like a pig, actually it's related to a pig, so they didn't want to give us the permit, and at the end they gave us the permit, but with the compromise that we were not going to do a lot of communication at all. They didn't want anyone to know that we were introducing the peccaries. Then, when also this project went well, now we are introducing peccaries in 5 places in Iberá, like the anteater. We have already sustainable populations. We don't release any more peccaries in 2 of these 5 sites. We could start communicating. Fears went out. So this is how we transport the animals. They all come from captivity. We also have a lot of problems with them putting the leg between the collar and the neck. We think it was because the animals lose weight during the adaptation period. It was really long for some animals because they come from captivity. We try not to work with animals that come from captivity, but we have to do that because it's the only permits that we get. Usually it's very hard for us to get permits to translocate wild animals. It's very good to start working with animals in captivity because you learn a lot of management of those species. They are easy to manage, these individuals. But then if you want to give a scale, you have to move to...
And we always, for the government to give us permission, we always present a project that is in an experimental phase. They always want to be sure that we know what we are doing. So always it's a very managed process at the very beginning until they are really sure that we are in the right way, and then we scale it up. And with the collar peccaries, we put collars to every animal, and then we realized that it was not a need to have all them collared, so we changed a little bit the strategy.
And then in 2016, we started to work with the tapir that was the biggest herbivore in Iberá. At the beginning, everything went well. We also brought animals from captivity. Always the process is really long until you get the adaptation. But after 3 years of work, we had many animals already living free, some of them even breeding. But then suddenly they started to die. So very quickly, we diagnosed the cause of this death, and it was like Simon said with the rhinos, the trypanosome. That's a parasite, a very complex parasite that causes the hip disease. It was introduced very early in the history to America with cattle. We knew that that parasite was in Iberá, but nobody knew that it affected the tapirs. That was not totally unexpected because tapirs and rhinos are very close related. Actually, Marcus and Dave Cooper from Africa, they advise us a lot on how to deal with this. But it's a parasite for which the animals don't create immunity. So there's also not a vaccine. There are drugs that you can get rid of it, but then they become infected again. The one thing that is very interesting is that the main host of this parasite is the capybara. Iberá is full of capybaras. There are thousands or millions of them everywhere, always grazing in every place, and they are the main host of this parasite, and the vector is a horsefly. And the parasite doesn't live long in the horsefly. So ranchers, because this parasite affects horses also a lot, they know that if they put horses 100 meters away, they will not get infected because the parasite dies while in the trip inside the horsefly. But here we think that because there are so many capybaras, the risk of infection is very high. And we also think that that could be because of the lacking of the top predators, that the capybaras have that behavior. So it will be interesting to see if the reintroduction of showers has any effect on that. But so far, it's a project that we have to suspend. We look in many other places of Corrientes for the disease, and it was everywhere. So we were planning to translocate, after releasing these captive animals, to translocate wild tapirs from El Impenetrable. That this is this park where we are working, to Iberá. But then the translocation project was just a monitoring project in Impenetrable. We could not translocate animals. You always learn good things from all this bad experience. One is, well, we discovered that this parasite affected tapirs. Then talking with Brazilian researchers of tapirs, they saw tapirs dying both in captivity and in the wild with the same symptoms. So maybe it's a parasite that is affecting this species a lot, but we didn't know about that. So, well, there are a lot of interesting things that you can take from failures also. And then we started with the first bird species. We were working with mammals. What we started with the red and green macaw. And here, this is a species that went completely extinct in Argentina, so there are no wild birds to translocate. So we had to use birds from captivity. And at the beginning, like always, we get the worst animals. There are institutions and persons that donate animals, but you always get the worst ones. So the ones that we brought to the project, they couldn't even fly. So we had to train them a lot in special facilities. We trained some of the individuals between 6 months and up to 1 year until they develop again the muscles. We trained them on how to find food because they were fed with vegetables, exotic vegetables in these houses. And we trained them on how to avoid predators because they were very used to go to the ground. So finally...
And with any animal, we try to go to the nearest project where they know more to learn how to manage it. If there is an opportunity, no? In this case, they went to Mexico, it was?
Yeah, we went to Mexico where they were releasing animals, and there also these birds, and we learned a lot. And well, the red and green macaws, they are doing well. In opposition to peccaries, pampas deer, and giant anteaters, that we have some populations in which we don't release animals anymore. The red and green macaws are already living free. They are breeding. They are breeding kind of well, but we still releasing birds to the wild. So it's a project in which we consider we don't have a sustainable population.
And this bird can fly long distance. So with the green and red macaw, we have a net of people in the surrounding areas that they all help in a way, and so it have much more support from the neighbors because they are all willing to see and help. So there's a social media net that are the ones who tell us where the birds fly. So it's much more. We have a lot of partners.
Social monitoring, of the birds, because the red and green macaw. I don't know which one. I think it was Delhi that said that some of the things that sometimes used to say no to this kind of project is that the species never live there. And we have that problem a lot with the red and green macaw because there were no records of red and green macaws inside Iberá, but they were just 25 kilometers to the border of the park. And the environment is almost the same. And the birds that we release, they already can fly up to 80 kilometers from the places where they spend the night and then go to feed. So, but still is a debate that National Park Service uses a lot to say that we are really not reintroducing the species, but introducing the species.
And they said it with peccary too. Local people, they said it with peccary, and a genetist, they say she said it with giant anteater.
Yeah.
The giant anteaters were not from Iberá, and many park rangers from Iberá said that there were never peccaries in Iberá. So it happened with 3 species.
We realize that many of these arguments, they use science to argue against the reintroduction because they cannot say we don't like it. So many times they just go into science or different arguments. We always give support from science to argue these arguments, but they will find another one just to stop the projects because they don't like it. And because there's a lot of egos behind, or it's owned by another people. So I think it's much the same, but this is a way they can stop it.
We think that some people in the offices, governmental officers, they don't like too much an NGO doing this kind of projects because they think that it's something that the state should be doing that, even though the state doesn't do it and almost doesn't do it. And also some scientists or researchers or conservationists, they don't like, as we said, this kind of active management. But since you cannot say that, always the questions, they come from technical aspects. But really, you are not discussing technical aspects. You are discussing, I don't know, philosophical aspects. So it's a kind of a big mess because you are debating about genetics or distribution or sanitary things, when really that is not the problem. So
sometimes the problem is that they don't even like you.
Yeah, exactly.
But they are not going to say I don't like you.
Yeah.
They're going to say peccaries were not there. But I tell you what this is, I don't like you.
Yeah.
Or you were not respectful, or you did that with the Pampas deer, so now I'm going to have revenge.
Yeah.
But they won't say that.
Exactly. So you are discussing like dogmas, not
it's a ghost fight because the real issue is never on the table.
Yeah, it's something that happens a lot. But well, so then we went with the other bird species, another big fruit eater that disperses a lot of seeds in this forest. Actually, there are many trees that produce big fruits that nobody was eating, but now the bare-faced curassow and in a way also the red and green macaw are eating and dispersing the seeds. We have to work with Brazil to reintroduce these species because there are no animals in captivity in Argentina, and actually Marcos is a Brazilian from Bella Vista Biological Station that sent us the first animals.
Sebas, I think they have to stretch a little bit because
I was waiting for this to finish to do that. So because I thought after this comes the jaguar.
Well, there are 2 or 3 species more, and then the jaguar.
Because if we keep at this rhythm, the people are going to. As Sofía said, we're going to do it. Vamos para arriba. Sofía felt it. I thought the jaguar was coming. So again, the Astrid Vargas method of survival for long talks. Okay, guaranteed. Okay.
We have to sing, Sebas. Try to sing.
To sing, yes.
Si no se levantan, luego no se quejen de que están cansados y no pongan cara de sueñito. O sea, bueno, vale, vamos. Venga, es un poquito más y seguimos. Sí, tenemos que escaparnos de las enumeraciones largas, ir a aprendizajes, patrones y a la acción del jaguar. Porque si vamos con enumeraciones así, taca, matamos a la gente.
Let's go to jaguars.
Entonces,
So these are other species that we are working with, the Wolfson's piscachas in Patagonia, the first species that we are introducing there, and now we started with the coipú, also in Patagonia. And then this is our first reintroduction project in El Impenetrable, the red-footed tortoise, which has released the first animals last week.
Most of these species came from outside Argentina, as we said, and it's very important because we are, through these species, we are doing processes that the government never did it before. We are changing the rules, we are changing all the sanitary barriers between countries. We have to do all kind of new like regulations. So in a way, we are impacting over the neighbor countries because as we have to transfrontier the borders. We think that through Argentina we can have like the basic to work in the continent, because we know that the borders of the nation is not the border of nature, but we need to start changing that that vision that Argentina stops here, then Chile will do what they need, Brazil they will do what they need, but now through little individuals we are opening doors and to get the other countries to do more or less the same.
Yeah. Actually, the giant otter is a species that went completely extinct in Argentina, and we are reintroducing it. And all the animals, they come from captivity from European zoos. So it's the European Zoo Association that is sending the animals. Also, we are working with the ocelot in Iberá. We didn't, with the giant otter and the ocelot, all the animals are in pre-release pens. We don't have animals already living free. It's the same with the marsh deer, one species that we are trying to translocate wild animals from Iberá to Impenetrable. And there are other species that we want to work with. This is the guanaco, a species that is still common in Patagonia, but we want to reintroduce it in Chaco, where it went completely extinct. I think Mike Phillips mentioned something that when the wolf get delisted from the Endangered Species Act, so there was like no need of reintroducing the wolf anymore. Well, we have a lot of problems with the red list of IUCN in which species are assessed globally or nationally, because the guanaco is not an endangered species, but it is completely extinct in the Chaco region. So the government is saying that it's not a priority species to work with. But rewilding that is about bringing back ecological roles to a territory. Then here, like Jala said with the guidelines of IUCN, is another tool that for some things is very useful, but for some others really is like it halts reintroduction projects. We want also to work with the huemul deer and very endangered species. This is worldwide. And
with the huemul, the
wolf.
same.
Yes.
People don't have memory of the huemul in another ecoregion that is the steppe. It's related to forest, so every time we are asking permission or just speaking about bringing back the huemul to the steppe, they all get crazy. Yeah. No, because they say you are trying to bring an animal to an ecosystem that is not for these species. They don't remember that the distribution was wider. But we have to work with this, with the Chilean government as well, because we share the population, and these have to be increased.
Yeah, exactly. This is the most endangered species of deer in the Americas, so it's also a species that is hard to work with. And we are also willing to work with reintroduction project with the Maine wolf, the largest canid of South America, so we are starting to manage this species. And then the lesser rhea is a Patagonian flightless rail that we don't have a need to reintroduce, but in Chile, in the Patagonian steppe of Chile, this species went almost extinct, so there are efforts to recover this species in Chile. Actually, Christian from Chile is here, and we want to capture and translocate wild rheas to Chile to try to set the first example of animals that were captured and moved internationally in South America for reintroduction purpose.
Because as Scott say and Pinda, our challenge is to get animals from us to be translocated to another area. If we can have the healthy population and we can give animals to other ecoregions, that will be our main goal. But we have to try to get it to other countries as well.
So, and finally, the jaguar. So this is the species that Doug wanted to reintroduce, but we have to go through this kind of large process to gain experience with other species.
Sebas, before talking about the jaguar, just to get a break, I think, I mean, it's kind of a weird situation for me because I was involved for 10 years, so they are talking is like, they should say this, they are not saying that. So it's like, should they say it or not? But I think something important, I mean, there are many things that I was thinking. I mean, one of the questions is how these guys went from 0 to 100 so fast. I mean, how could they learn so fast? What was the approach? I mean, because that's quite abnormal. And I think that's something that we should talk about. I mean, let me see how I can explain it. I mean, the typical way of organizations to think when you plan something, when you decide, okay, you're going to do something new that you've never done, and your team doesn't know how to do it. Mm-hmm. So how do you learn? Typically, what many people do, and especially Latin organizations, is your question is, who do I know, who is my friend, who knows something about this? So you look your friend who knows a little about jaguars, or a little about giant anteaters, or whatever. I think that doesn't bring you to very good results, because you are limited to your friends and to your network. I think what Conservation Land Trust did at that time, the question is, who are the best in the world doing this, and I'm going to see how to turn them into my friends. And that's a totally different approach. So, giant anteater, we worked with Brazilians, because nobody in Argentina knew about that. Pampas deer, we talked but we talked to the Argentinians. Yeah. We talked to the Argentinians, and we had these meetings. But it wasn't such a good feeling up. It's like, no, this is too complicated, and they were very busy, Wildlife Conservation Society, and they have priorities, and it wasn't part of their priorities, and it was like, this is going to be kind of a pain. But then we talked to the Brazilians, and they're like, yeah, we do it. We do it all the time. I mean, this is not so complicated. So it's like, okay, I'm going to marry you, and they came. And that's also politically extremely important, because, I mean, we were doing the first capture of Pampas deer in Corrientes. Everybody was very nervous. I mean, we weren't in a politically strong position. And the park director was kind of taking a risk, a political risk, helping us. But having a Brazilian that is 1 meter, 90 centimeters, like this, huge guy, with lots of experience, and him from Brazil saying, okay, we know how we do it, don't worry. And he will say, animals are going to die. So you should tell everybody that some animals are going to die. And he said that straightforward. So accidents are going to happen, but if we said animals are going to die, I mean, there's no way we will ever start it. But because there was this big Brazilian guy, they said, okay, probably he knows what he's saying. So then jaguar, I mean, nobody knew about reintroducing jaguars in Latin America, not even in, so, okay, next closest thing was, okay, let's try with tigers in India. So just looking for the people with the most experience in the world and connecting them, they never charge us. They always work for free. You just have to show that you are for real, that the project is serious. Also convincing the jaguar experts, it was kind of similar. So that's how you learn very fast. And that's how you go from knowing nothing to being the team with the most experience in giant anteater translocations, Pampas deer translocation, and you can do that in 3-4 years. And I think that's something important to know here. It was also to change a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. No, we did it also with jaguars, and especially with jaguars, because there were no experiences. No one reintroduced jaguars before, so we brought a lot of people from Africa. We also went to see projects. We went to India.
We bring Astrid from the Lince. All the experience with the lynx here was our main.
The Jaguar project was a Frankenstein that combined the lynx experience with the African experience and the Indian experience.
And well, how we have to start also, they didn't allow us to translocate wild jaguars. In Argentina, there are only 200 jaguars surviving, so it's critically endangered. So they didn't allow us to translocate. We have to breed, to build a breeding center. We have to bring animals from captivity. As always, you always get the worst animals, so we brought the first female that was kind of old, and also with the same male. They never bred, but they were very useful to start talking about jaguars. Then we brought the first female that bred, that she had only 3 legs, but she was a great breeder. So that's how you start. And then we managed, after having success in breeding the jaguars, now we will show a video about that, we managed to translocate or to bring animals, jaguars, wild jaguars from Brazil and even from Paraguay. But these jaguars were rescued ones, orphans or animals that appear in bad conditions. So far we were not able to translocate wild animals, just to capture the animals and translocate them to the project for reintroduction purpose.
What we have to say is, Doug, from the very beginning, he started to show the image of the jaguar to every neighbor we have, to every place he goes. He always said, I wanted to create a national park and bring back the jaguar. And the people get a little nervous with that presentations. But he always said, no, this will come in 20 years, don't worry. Don't worry, it's far away in time. And we're winning time. And at the moment when we have to really said we were going to this, what we realize is that the Correntinos, the province of Corrientes, is very proud of themselves. They seem to be very courage, and this courage for them is because they are jaguars. And that was a really good surprise, because they don't feel fear about the jaguars, because they feel, I think the Maasai should be more or less the same. They feel that their culture evolved with jaguars, so it was natural they can live with jaguars. And they were surprised that the jaguars were not there, because they didn't realize that the jaguars went extinct. It was so present in the culture that when we told them that we were going to do that, they were, okay, yes, why not? So that was a really good thing. It was a surprise, a good surprise. And we used that along all the process to build this support of the people.
I think also to continue with this conversation, I think one of the things that comes from what they are telling is that you typically don't start with, not even with the best animals. You don't even start with the right animals. Yeah. You start with whatever you can get your hands on. I mean, the first giant anteater, it was a domestic anteater that lived under a pizza oven in a house. The first jaguars we could get were the worst possible. But if you don't break that first step, that psychological barrier, break the ice, it's better to start with something that is, I mean, of course, you're not going to release the horrible jaguar. But little by little, that allowed them to get much better jaguars from Brazil. But there's no way they could have started with the right jaguars from Brazil.
Yeah, and also it was very important to start having these jaguars with names that the people of Corrientes start to know really well for the project. Because if we bring jaguars directly from Brazil, maybe people will not get a link with the project. That was very important, because at the end we were looking for the support of the people to release the jaguars, because we knew we never going to get that permit that support from the government. So with the jaguar, we started in 2012 building the breeding center. We brought the first female in 2015, as I said, 2016 the first male, they never bred. But in 2018, we could have the first calves, the 2 first jaguars that born in Corrientes in more than 70 years, probably 100 years, something like that. So we knew from that moment that when we have 2 Correntinos jaguars, those jaguars were going to live in Corrientes and free. Because Correntinos are so proud, they feel like kind of independent from Argentina. They will never let their jaguars to go out. And the story of these jaguars was like a soap opera for Corrientes, always sending key messages through these stories, but we use the story of the animals a lot. We put a name to all the animals. So in 2000, at the end of 2019, 2020, we were kind of prepared to release the first jaguars after more than 10 years of work. So it's like we made a video to start seeing how was the environment for that release.
Another thing important is we know that nobody will sign these permits because if people are afraid of jaguars as top predator, they think that they will kill people and they will kill cattle and there will be a lot of problems. So we know that nobody will sign alone this authorization. So we think what will be the strategy so nobody is the only one approving this. So we use the change of government and also the donation of the land to national park, the change of jurisdiction as the moment that we can have two signs, the province and the nation, and nobody, and a gap. So nobody feels that is responsible. So we with the change of government, so the government that was leaving was going to sign the permit, but they will not going to release, and they will leave a little paper for the next government to sign, but it was a sign that was over the other government, so it was the last government, the new government, the province, the nation, and the government the province passed a law declaring the jaguar as a monument, but it was still not free. So there are a lot of paperwork to avoid this perception that one person was responsible of the whole decision. We have to split it in many, many, many different authorizations and different kind of moments. And the gap between one election and the second election and having the two different parties changing parties is a perfect moment to make this kind of approval because they are tough to make.
Yeah, so we get the approval for the reintroduction project, but not for the release of each animal. But at least when we had that permit, we made this video. You can put it there. So we prepared this video saying that we were ready to release the jaguar, but then nobody wanted to sign the permit to release the first female with the 2 cubs. So, and we knew that if we, as an NGO, asked for that permit, the answer was going to be no, because as Sofía said, nobody wants to have the responsibility of putting that in a signature. So what we did is we made a campaign similar to the one that Mike Phillips showed us with the wolf, in which the Corrientes people were going to be the ones asking for the permit to release the jaguar, asking for the release of the jaguar, not even a permit. So we made a series of videos with different personalities from Corrientes, mayors of the communities of Iberá, even the governor, people from culture, researchers, gauchos, big ranchers, big cattle ranchers, small people that have small cattle ranches. So that way the government could not say no. And we said that because it was really like that, the people of Corrientes was so engaged with the project, with all these animals, that they wanted them to be free. Also because by that time we already changed the entire economy of the region. It was a region that was the main activity of many localities was already nature tourism based on wildlife watching, the model that we show at the beginning. And these are some examples of the videos.
Mi nombre es Omar. Aparte de ser un paisano, soy un guía de sitio, soy un lugareño acá de los esteros del Liberá. Se hablaba que hace 100 años había dejado de existir el yaguareté en el lugar que antes había. De ahí la concepción del yaguareté corá. De ahí algunas lagunas en los esteros del Liberá que se llaman laguna yaguareté justamente. Sin duda que hace muchos años algunas personas lo han descubierto en esa parte, entonces le dejan su nombre. Y bueno, yo pienso que con la llegada de estos animales, como dije, Corrientes vuelve a ser Corrientes y que para mí va a ser muy, y ya está siendo muy beneficioso para la gente que hoy por hoy nos están visitando y para esto que estamos queriendo hacer, como es el turismo de nivel, digamos, lo que yo llamo un turismo de calidad. Como pequeño ganadero acá de los esteros del Liberá, los yaguareté van a estar sueltos. Yo pienso que no acarrearía mucho problema para el pequeño ganadero, porque al tener suficiente comida estos animales, yo pienso que se va a poder convivir entre ganadero y estos animales, mirándolo, cuidándolo, o sea que para mí no es un problema más. Aquella gente que viene a visitar el Liberá van a tener la opción de verlo a esos animales, que nunca va a ser muy fácil, por cierto, pero ya vamos a tener a los yaguaretecitos caminando, rondando por los esteros del Liberá, o sea que va a ser algo estupendo, Dios mediante.
Soy presidente de la comparsa Zapucay de la ciudad de Corrientes y bueno, un poco contarles del tema del último carnaval que presentó la comparsa, muy vinculado al Iberá y a los yaguareté que se están reinsertando en nuestro Parque Nacional Iberá. La comparsa siempre trata de presentar temas vinculados a Corrientes y en esta oportunidad creímos muy importante hacerlo con este hito que llama la atención a todos los correntinos y al mundo entero, que es la reinserción de los yaguaretés en el Parque Nacional, con el primer nacimiento de 2 cachorros que fue el hilo conductor del tema desarrollado. Elegimos esto porque bueno, son los primeros cachorros nacidos después de muchos años en los esteros. Son los que un poco contaron la historia que quisimos mostrar de las especies que se están reinsertando en el Parque Nacional. Recientemente también han nacido un par de cachorros más y bueno, lo bueno de todo esto es el ámbito en el que van a vivir estos cachorros y todos los animales que viven en los esteros, y bueno, nosotros queremos de que que vivan en libertad como merecen vivir, y después de muchos años que no tuvimos esta especie en la provincia de Corrientes.
Corrientes es la primera provincia argentina que tomó la decisión de reintroducir especies extintas, como el guacamayo rojo, la nutria gigante y el yaguareté. En este año difícil festejamos la llegada de 2 nuevos cachorros, Caraí y Porá. Este es un logro de todos los correntinos. Mediante el turismo de naturaleza, el Parque Iberá se presenta como una gran oportunidad para el desarrollo social y económico de nuestra provincia, además de ser un motivo de orgullo para los correntinos. Juntos sigamos trabajando por la naturaleza, por la flora y la fauna. Es la que nos hace únicos en el mundo.
So we had even the priest of the towns talking about that they wanted to have the release of the jaguar. So Corrientes is a very Catholic province, so if the messengers of God say that the jaguars have to be released, then they have to be released. And I don't know if the last video also doesn't work, right? Because finally we were able to release... No.
¿Hay uno después del gobernador?
Sí, ese, el que está en negro, arriba.
Esto, vamos a ver. Ahí está.
So after making this campaign, we were able to release the first 3 jaguars. It was a female with the 2 cubs. Nobody signed the permit, so nobody said that the releasing was okay.
Es este, ¿verdad?
Sí. This is the video that we made in January 2001 to announce the releasing of the.
So
nobody.
You did the campaign with the priest and the governor or whatever, and then you say, okay, I'm going to release it.
See, and we invite.
So because we're going to release it, we're going to release a video saying that we're going to release it.
Yes. No.
Okay?
We make an invitation to all the ministers, to all the national government, the mayors, the governor. They were all invited to the release.
Yeah.
We send invitations.
Yeah.
They answer yes to the invitation, but they don't sign the papers. But they were all okay with that. They prepare all their own communication strategies.
Okay.
They were more interested in the communication strategy than signing the papers.
Okay.
So nobody cares about.
It's important to understand that it's Argentina, okay? So, yeah. Yeah.
But since they were a public campaign, giving the welcome to the jaguars from the Minister of Environment of the nation and the governor saying this is a proud for Corrientes, and everyone was really, really happy with the idea. We don't push the authorization because, and they were the ones who showed the nation and the province that they were doing this, just doing this. So and we didn't appear on those.
So you achieved an informal authorization.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly. These were the first three jaguars released. Now we have 8 already living free, and we are going to release, keep releasing animals. One thing to say is well, after this release, everybody gets so excited. It was in all the newspapers, international media, the New York Times, even Leonardo DiCaprio congratulates the Argentinians. So now the national government wants to be inside. So they said, okay, they are going to give the permits for the second release. We can ask for the second release. So we ask, and they say no. So the fight never ends. But
the media impact was huge.
Yeah,
it was
the media
totally
impact
global.
was huge,
I mean,
exactly.
Everywhere.
And then the genetic issues appear, because we were going to release the sister of the first female, but, well, it's a process. I mean, and we cannot release all the jaguars at once. Also, we released the female with the 2 cubs as a strategy, because in Argentina, national parks are not fenced, so jaguars can go anywhere, and we wanted them to be anchored to the park, to the territory. So we thought that releasing a female with jaguars, with cubs that were 3 to 4 months old, those cubs were big enough to follow the mother, but not long distance. So the mother was going to be exploring little by little. And we don't know if it was because of that, but that's what the mother did. Then the second female went out with 2 cubs also. Then we released a 3rd female, and then we released the male. And now the male has a much bigger territory, but what he does is he visits all these 3 females, all around. So that is kind of working. We have the jaguars anchored to the territory. That is something really good. And now we are working a lot with local communities to prepare them for the future conflicts, because for sure there will be. I mean, for many people, the jaguar is now an opportunity. It's not a problem anymore, but for some people, it will be a problem when the population will start to grow and disperse. So we are preparing the first ranchers that we think will meet the jaguar at the first time. So basically, I think we can start closing with some general ideas.
Things that you learned?
Yeah, exactly. Well, there are some pictures of, with all the species in South America, the jaguar, the giant anteater, the pampas deer, the giant otter, all of them are the first reintroduction project of all these species. So although we go to Africa or to Brazil or to other places to learn, we always have to experiment in all the stages of the project. So transporting the animals, building the pre-release pens, using the telemetry, monitoring the animals, feeding, supplementing. So there was a lot of some 5 or 6 pictures about one of these stages that are the pre-release pens that we needed to design.
Do you want to pass them?
Okay, so for collared peccaries at the beginning, we used big pre-release pens that were fixed. Then we needed to start to use smaller ones and mobile, because we had a lot of fights between the groups that were already releasing and the ones that we release after. For giant otters, we have to build pens, half in the water, half in land, to teach the otters how to fish, because they never catch live fish before. So for ocelots, the same, but we build these pens with a net, because we are trying to feed them also with birds that cannot escape from the pens. So for the bird-faced curassow, we build very high pens, because they need to know that at night they have to go up to the trees to avoid predation. The red and green macaw, these pens to teach them how to fly, how to avoid predators, big pens. Then other smaller pens when we do this soft release with the animals. With the jaguars, the very big breeding center. This is the biggest pen in which they have their own food. So it's the last stage before releasing them. All these pens, in the case of the jaguar, they are monitored from the far, because we release animals that they don't have to have a positive attitude towards humans. So we never see the jaguars that are going to be released. We see them through cameras. We feed them with live prey through special devices. And, well, maybe we can make like a close, because...
Basically, what we learn is you need to have a big vision and a very you have to dream big, and you have to have a team that is willing to do things, do people. Because if you don't have that kind of people that they're really, really pushy and really convinced that this is a really good thing to do, you will be stopped for many, many people, because it's a long process and things always go wrong at the very beginning, and you have to continue, have to be very sure that you're really convinced that this have to happen. No? So I think that not only you have to be a biologist, you have to like to learn, but you have to be a little entrepreneur. What we learned from these processes, Doug was an entrepreneur. He didn't think about no. Nobody can say no to him, and this is the kind of things we need to have very present. Every time that you hear a no, you have to go for the yes. Because things are, if we really want to change the crisis of extinctions, we have to go very deep into the problem and just try to do our best. We are, as humans, we like this kind of challenges. We make all what we do because we are developers. We like to do things. So if we can destroy the world, I think we can also restore the world. So this is the kind of leaders we need to really reverse extinction. Really what counts for politicians that at the end of the day, they are the ones who take responsibilities because they are the government. Although we are NGOs, it's government who have to have the vision. So we can come with a great vision, but the vision have to be passed to the government. Different from India, different from Australia, that the government is part of this huge vision. South Africa, we are starting with a vision that came from citizens. Doug, Ignacio, us, and we have to pass this vision to the politicians. So we really have to forget our past of biology, and we have to become politicians in a way, and we have to learn what are the needs and the interests of the people, because they have to sign this and they have to change these decisions. So basically, what we do most of our time is talking to people, talking to politicians, became really into their needs to get things done. We talk a lot that we are all scientific, we are all biologists, but we have to become all politicians at the end of the day. Great if you are Mike Phillip, because you really have the power.
Okay.
Okay.
I think just to have a conversation, because we have a few minutes and also maybe questions. I think one of the things that I would like to kind of stress from your work is, I mean, I think Rewilding Argentina, in my opinion, right now is the international organization that is doing the best communication that I know. I mean, yes, not. I mean, it's not. I mean, compared to, for example, African parks, but it's, which has a bigger budget and having a huge impact on a large area. If I can compare the way they communicate and the way you communicate, and especially the way you use videos, I mean, there's no comparison. I mean, you are used to that, but seeing it from outside is absolutely outstanding. I mean, if you get into their YouTube site, every 2 days, there's a video. And they're always bringing news from the field. So you see something about the curassows, or you see something about the jaguar, or you see something about the community. So every time you are boom, 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 boom. Bringing news from the field, not in an academic way, through video, which is the most powerful way to communicate with people, which of course, those videos are watched through social media. So how important is that for you? I mean, in political terms, technical, getting social support, fundraising, or because you do it a lot and very well.
We, as an organization, all 90% of our staff, they live in the territories. They are based in the territories. So all the decisions are taken in the territory. Sofía and I, we live in the different parks. We don't live in a city. So all the decisions are territory-based. And communication also comes from the territory. So I think this is one of the characteristics of the things that we do. Also, we say that we communicate conservation problems or environmental problems only if we are going to work to solve that problem.
Okay.
Yeah? So it's a way in which you invite people or you show people that you are proactive. It's not only about saying that everything is wrong, but it's something that, well, we are going to try to do something. It's in our hands to try to solve that.
Yeah.
And yes.
So instead of saying that this is someone's problem and the government should do something,
Yeah, exactly.
you only communicate about things
Never.
that, okay, we are responsible and we're going to do something about it.
Yeah, exactly. And then, as I said, we use a lot the individual stories of the animals. Most of our animals, they have a name, and we use that to communicate a lot, but although all people that follows our social medias and, well, in the press or the news about the Fundación Rewilding Argentina, they know about these jaguar calves and everything, but we don't just tell that story like a soap opera, but we use all these stories to communicate key messages about the need of predators to come back, the need to have complete a fully functional ecosystem.
So you are storytellers in the classic way that you were saying. I mean, you create the stories with characters to communicate trophy cascades or concepts that you want, or predators or things like that.
Another thing we realize is the politicians, they follow our social media, and so we can influence the politicians through the social media, because everyone is who is willing to be voted, they measure the support through those, actually through the social media, and so you can influence a lot through social media in the administrative work and the politicians. Also in Argentina, we don't have really poaching in the parks, so there's not much staff of national parks in the parks. And what they do for knowing what is happening, they follow social media as well. So we are all following what is happening in the field through social media. So if we want to change a perception also, it's important. It's just knowing the context. Perhaps in other countries, this is not so important, but in Argentina, and after the pandemic, that they were really all looking to that. The most important thing was social media, or trying to promote things, or they're telling stories about what they are doing. For the government is important. We offer them sometimes these kind of campaigns. We offer them for free for the government, so they can also take credit for all what we do. We don't brand that.
If you always put the logos of the two governments in your
yes, but also not only that. If they want, we do a campaign for them that is without our logo. It's only them.
Okay.
So if they want to take credit, the Corrientes government, the province, we offer them to be the owners of all these achievements. We do books for them. We make table books for the province, so they can be proud of what they are achieving, and they can share it with other provinces or with the national government. So we do all the communication also for the government if they are willing to have these achievements as their own achievement. We don't need to have credit for this. What we need is that they send the permission and they support us. So if that is what we have to do, we do it.
Okay, one thing, I mean, just to close, I think to remark about them is about leadership. I mean, Argentina is a big country, and they manage areas from Patagonia to Corrientes, which is, I don't know, 3,000 kilometers distance or something like that. They don't work in an office, so they jump from one park to another. So they live in a car or in a plane or in their parks. So they are very, very present with their teams. So they're always there. And I think actually have two images that I didn't put them here, but I have them in my mind that I download them. I mean, you heard about the huge fires in Iberá, okay? 500,000 hectares were burned. So that was catastrophic, and the world was talking about that. And I have two pictures that is on WhatsApp. One is Sofía on the little airplane with the senator of the province, I mean, the political guy, and the famous actress of
Juanita
Viale. So you have the famous actress, I mean, who has huge
followers.
Not many followers. I mean, he's very respected, young but very respected, and the politician. The three of them looking at the fire, it's like, wow, this woman is amazing. I mean, he's got the politician and the actress together. So that's a political acumen, you know. But the other picture is she fighting the fire like that. I mean, with 8 gauchos around her. So I mean, that's Sofía. So she will be. I mean, and it wasn't a fake picture. I mean, she loves fighting fires. I mean, because she's fire, so it's fire with fire. So she was like. So those two pictures, I think that really reflect the level of leadership and commitment. I mean, and that's what makes a difference. I mean, having the political olfato. I mean, come on. I mean, yeah, to know that you gotta be in that plane with those two guys, but 2 hours later you're with the gauchos working with the fire. So I think that really defines them. So it's the context. What I say, I'm in charge of reading the context and trying to change it, and also reading the opportunities, because if we can change the context and have the government working with us, this will be much more faster, much more bigger. But as being a little NGO that is in the ground, we need to be really political strategic. So the government is really supporting us, because this should be a policy. And policies are made by governments. They are not made by NGOs. But we have to have that kind of get the vision into the government. In Argentina and in South America, this is not India. This is probably not United States of Europe. In South America, it's all a mess. Governments are changing continuously. Private property is strong, so there's a lot of people that became leaders without being in the government. So there's a lot of opportunity for this kind of commitment, and it's really a chance for changing the way we work. It's our context. South America is like that, so we will. That's why we like to work in Argentina, and from Argentina we are willing to influence and inspire Brazil, Chile, Uruguay, and we know that they have a lot of opportunities. There's big teams there, and eventually we will follow the other continents, and we will get there working in a bigger scale. No? We think that we are just playing like dolls, like kids, but we are willing to have a restoration policy of the continent to get this crisis of extinction to reverse. No? Okay. I think we have. Gracias. We have time for 2 questions. If someone has questions, Astrid is there.
That was amazing. That was so good and inspirational, and thank you so much for doing this and for teaching us all these good lessons. And my question goes about this. I was really wanting to ask it in the middle of the talk. It's like when you said, now our next step is to prepare the local communities for what's to come, for the problems, when you have jaguars getting into their land, eating their cattle. And I know you have a beautiful strategy, a Pascual and all that, so if you could speak a little bit of how do you prepare local people to embrace problems?
Okay, so the first ring around the place where we're releasing the jaguars, we are releasing the jaguars in this very big park, so in a place where there's no cattle, no people. But the first ring, they are mostly small group of houses, 2 houses in one place, 4 houses in the other, sometimes with a family, sometimes with only one man. So these are the ones that are more close to the jaguars. One of the videos about supporting the release of the jaguar, for example, was one of these persons that now is already doing tourism business. So he has cattle, but he has also tourism. So he's one that is seeing the jaguar as an opportunity. So that's the best that you can do, turn the jaguar into an opportunity. For some others that will still be with cattle, maybe they will start to have conflicts. One thing that we did, for example, is we know them very well. We have 2 of our staff that they visit them almost every 2-3 weeks. We put solar panels. They have very small ranches, very poor, with no cell phones, nothing. So we put solar panels. We gave them VHF radio so they can communicate with us. We show them where the jaguars are. They know the jaguars by name because, all the jaguars have satellite collars. So, and we try to prepare them about the jaguar, but they have so many problems that the jaguar is not even in the list so far. But yeah, it's even, for example, we have one jaguar that went to a place where 2 of these ranches are. We were there with them. They were completely relaxed. Then once they saw that one of the jaguars could prey on a small cow, they call us. It was the cow died because of other reasons. So it's like we have a very close relationship with all of them. But once the jaguars go, and if they still are working with cattle and not with tourism, or cattle being their main economic activity, we will try not to do compensations. We don't like the compensation model. That will be like the last option. So we prefer to explore if we have some kind of problem, this kind of positive compensations in which they receive something because they have jaguars in their properties. So it will be kind of that. But so far, we are talking a lot with them. They know a lot about the project. They even collaborate with us. In one of the videos, you see 2 of the gauchos catching a capybara to give it to the jaguars that are in the pens as live prey. So these are the ones that live close to us. So they know the project very well. They don't have problems with the jaguars so far. In the future, if we start to have this kind of conflicts, we will have to see how there are different coexistence methods also that we can try, but that is kind of far away, I think.
See, the other thing is we don't have a high populated area around, no? We are talking about 20 families, nothing to do with the villages they have in India, no? Where there are 20 families living like 20 kilometers from the place we're doing our release project. So with them, we have this kind of connection. Then we have 10 towns, 10 municipalities. We work in all of them. We give talks. We have relations with the mayor. They were all invited to every step of the places. They are all working with nature tourism. Eventually, the cattle ranchers, the big cattle ranchers, perhaps they don't like the jaguar, but at the moment they all say they were proud to have it there. But we have a person that is relating to all these big ranches. And when I say big ranches, they're like 5,000 hectares on, no? They're big ranchers with a lot of cattle, like 1,000 to 5,000 cows. As I said, there's big private properties with people that don't live there. They live in Buenos Aires, in the city. They have 5 or 6 employees that go around. Basically, we have to relate with the employees because other one could be afraid if the jaguar came there. But I think the ranchers will support us. We start to have we will relate like with 200 ranchers. So we have a huge buffer zone. But we are managing numbers that are manageable. We don't have these huge density population.
Yeah. So also when you go to see them because of the jaguar and you start to talk about problems, the main problem, for example, is flooding. They lose a lot of cattle when flooding comes, so we are trying to help them to organize their activities, to manage better the cattle, so to avoid all this death, to take out the cattle before the flooding comes, because all the animals die, and the ones that don't die, they have to sell it almost for nothing. So when you try to approach the future problems, there are many other problems that you can start working with, and the jaguar is like a tail so far.
Well, I think the most important thing is that you create a level of trust that is very, very close. So you are real neighbors, and you behave as very good neighbors. And that's very important, and then you will see what happens. But you are not ghost. The team is working all the time helping them. When there's a big flood, they ask for access for the cows to the property, and you say okay. Yeah. So I think it's about trust and about having very close relationships.
Yeah, they need to go to the hospital, and we bring them to the hospital. So it's like we have a very close relationship. Yeah.
Okay. See, we will have problems with national parks, because the one who are afraid of all these processes is the government. They were very happy to release the jaguar. They have a lot of communication support, and they do really good campaign with these acts, but they are afraid. What we have to do is try to have a much more conversation with national parks.
With the rangers, with the park rangers.
With the administrative, the superintendents, the politicians, and the managers. Because what we see in other places, like in Patagonia, where there's mountain lion pumas, they put big signals. You have to, if you see a puma run away, they're bad guys. They're having all these bad communication strategy with top predators. And here we are bringing back a top predator. But in their culture, top predators are really stressful. So what we have to do is not prepare the ranchers, but prepare a national park to deal with these problems and not to be afraid in the future if something happens, because it will happen.
Okay. One more question? Okay, Jana, please. No, she's coming anyway.
Yeah, it was very gracious of you to say that you didn't need the credits and you'd give them to the government. But I'm sure you have funding from other sources, and your fundraisers would definitely need their logos and that kind of stuff. How do you manage with that when you have such a disparate view of people taking away your credit and not giving it down the line? And one out of ignorance, another question. Has there ever been attacks on humans by jaguars?
What? Attacks on humans, ataques a humanos. Sí, los jaguares han atacado humanos.
That's my ignorance, I don't know.
About the donors, we worked with Jack Tompkins. He didn't need credits at that moment. Now we don't have the support of the Tompkins, but we have the support of a lot of other partners. They understand the importance of bringing back species. They don't ask for credits. That's a good supporter. And basically, if we need to give credits to our partnership, it will be international credits, but not national credits. And for the government, it don't bother if there's an international credit for partners. The thing is nationally. Nationally, they are the ones who could do everything, and we don't need to explain anything.
Yeah, and regarding jaguars attacking people, there are very, very few records, and mostly associated with hunters that shoot the jaguar, they don't kill it, and the jaguar attacks the hunter. Or sometimes it happened in Pantanal of tourist guides feeding the jaguar. And I think there was a case of a jaguar killing 2 of these people that fed the jaguars with fish, but they are like exceptions. They are not like leopards, for example. It's the same with the puma. There are some cases with the puma in North America, but in South America, very, very few.
There are more cases with pumas than with jaguars.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay, so now we take a break. This is the last presentation or the last conversation about a continental experience.